My sister believed a shaman could help my nephew get rich. In my previous life, she thought he'd have great fortune, so every day she forced my 3-month-old nephew to eat live insects. I feared these bacteria-laden worms would be very harmful to his health. I firmly objected. My nephew grew up safely, but he held a deep grudge against me, only because my sister constantly whispered in his ear, "It's your aunt's fault you didn't get rich. Otherwise, you'd be a world billionaire." So he pretended to invite me for a drink. In reality, he waited for me to get drunk to use a rope to strangle me to death. Given a second chance at life, my sister continued to feed my nephew live insects. I smiled. This time, I'm already rich, but don't you dare forget me. While my 3-month-old nephew Leo was sitting in his baby chair, wailing so loudly the world seemed to spin. My sister, meanwhile, was holding a ceramic jar, coaxing him to eat something. No, that was absolutely not food. Inside the ceramic jar were squirming, soft, black worms. My sister's face beamed as she flattered him. "Good boy, open wide. These are all good things. Mom specially spent a fortune to buy them for you. Eat one bite, and I guarantee you'll become a high-ranking official and strike it rich." My daughter Daisy tottered over to the baby and asked in a childish voice, "Auntie, what's this?" My sister's face immediately changed. She clutched the ceramic jar like a treasure, hid it under her shirt, and then loudly called my name. "Vivian, can you teach your daughter some manners? Reaching for good things like that is so embarrassing." I walked into the kitchen, picked up Daisy, and said, "Sister, Daisy is just a child, don't scare her. Besides, why are you bringing worms into the kitchen?" My sister's face showed a flicker of smugness. "No wonder people in the village say, the more educated women are, the stupider they become. You've lived in the city for a few years and forgotten all the good things our ancestors left behind. These aren't ordinary worms, they're an ancestral remedy. Eating these worms can change one's destiny. Our family gave birth to Leo to be someone above others. When he gets rich, he'll earn money you couldn't even dream of in your entire life." Leo was my nephew's real name. My sister's words sounded so familiar. In my previous life, I had brought my 2-year-old daughter back to our hometown to visit. I found my sister bustling in the kitchen and realized she was secretly feeding the baby, who had just finished breastfeeding, live worms. Faced with my suspicion and opposition, she just stubbornly argued, "Vivian, what do you know? You're jealous because I gave birth to a son, and you can't stand to see my son and me do well. These are fortune worms. Eating them guarantees my son will get rich." I saw my nephew's face pale from being forced to eat the worms. Without bothering to argue, I immediately took him to the town hospital. There was induced vomiting, injections. My sister was even harshly scolded by the doctor, and only then did she temporarily stop forcing my nephew to eat worms and threw away all the expensive worms she had bought. I thought everything was over, but little did I know my sister harbored resentment. Day after day, she badmouthed me in front of my nephew. If it weren't for your aunt interfering, our family would have been compensated a long time ago. Why listen to her? Otherwise, we'd probably be living in a villa in the city center now. It's your aunt's fault you didn't get rich. Otherwise, you'd be a world billionaire by now. My nephew grew up believing I had ruined his path to wealth. The day before my daughter was supposed to get engaged to her boyfriend, that beast threw a dinner party. He waited until we were drunk, then cruelly murdered us. Fortunately, heaven pitied me and gave me another life. Don't you want to eat worms? Well, this time, eat as much as you want. Really, these worms are quite miraculous. What kind of remedy is this, sister? Share it with me. I pretended to be curious, preparing to lean in and look closer. My sister frantically pushed my hand away. "This remedy only works for boys who eat it. It's useless if your daughter eats it." I pulled my hand back, sighing. It seems my little Daisy isn't blessed enough to enjoy this. It's her destiny not to eat these destiny-changing worms. My sister, thinking she had kept the secret of her treasure safe, beamed with joy. Who says heaven doesn't have its own plans? The more fortune worms he eats, the richer he'll be later. I curled my lip indifferently. Is that so? When you strike it rich, remember not to forget me. But even if you strike it rich, you need to see if you're still alive to spend it. That night, my nephew started running a high fever, continuously frothing at the mouth, his entire body burning. "Wake up, quickly take your son to the hospital." My sister unceremoniously pushed me awake, ordering me to drive her and her son to the hospital. I slowly put on my clothes. "Didn't you say Leo was blessed? Why is he so seriously ill?" My sister needed my help, so for now, she didn't dare to speak harshly. When I took my nephew to the town clinic, she immediately changed her attitude. Leo has a fever because his fortune isn't thick enough. Wait until I feed him a few more fortune worms, and he'll be guaranteed immortality and immunity to all poisons. I almost couldn't help but laugh, nodding in agreement. The town clinic had limited facilities, and it was night, so they couldn't accurately determine my nephew's condition. The nurse asked my sister. She insisted that the boy only breastfed and ate nothing else. Finally, the diagnosis was that he might have caught a cold. An injection and a good night's sleep would fix it. Despite what was said, my nephew's face was flushed. He seemed very uncomfortable. His limbs thrashed in his diaper, and he clutched my car keys tightly, refusing to let go. My sister's tone changed again. See, my Leo is blessed. He has a 40-degree fever and is still as strong as a dragon. Your daughter would be dead if she had a fever of just 30 degrees. As soon as she finished speaking, my nephew let out a loud wail. My sister quickly bent down to soothe him, naturally missing my icy gaze. Not only did she torment me, but she also wished harm upon my daughter. In that case, don't blame me for not helping when she was in trouble, respecting others' choices, mocking their destiny. My nephew became intellectually disabled due to the high fever. To say intellectually disabled isn't entirely accurate. In fact, it was due to meningitis, leading to delayed cognitive development. After I brought my daughter back to the city, I only heard about it from our rural neighbors when they called to ask for my help with something. They accidentally mentioned, "Your nephew had a high fever for 3 straight days." Your sister refused to take him to the hospital, saying she was making some kind of spiritual elixir wine medicine at home. The day before yesterday, I visited, and the boy who used to be so bright now just stares blankly at people, not even moving his pupils. Don't you think that's scary? I was silent for a moment, then let out a soft, voiceless laugh. My sister never mentioned it, perhaps afraid I would look down on her. Living 2 lives, this was the first time I saw karma come so quickly. I gently warned the neighbor not to gossip, and she immediately agreed. My sister's personality had always been quarrelsome. Anyone who dared to call her son a fool in front of her would be torn apart. It was no surprise. The neighbors had long seen through my sister's true nature, staying out of it and only watching from a distance. Only I was foolish enough to think of others, only to suffer the consequences. I didn't plan to go looking for my sister because of that, but unexpectedly, she came looking for me. Before finishing work, I went to the daycare to pick up Daisy. As I stepped out of the elevator, my sister bumped into me. She was carrying a pile of luggage and holding Leo. She pushed past me, intending to open my door. Seeing me standing still, my sister got angry. "Don't you see how much stuff I'm carrying? Can't you open the door to help?" I glanced at the floor, pots, pans, summer and winter clothes, everything. She wasn't just coming to freeload as before, this time she was clearly planning to move in permanently. I forced a smile. "Sister, why didn't you let me know you were coming to my house? Have you booked a hotel yet? If not, I can recommend a cheap place." She couldn't believe it. She clearly hadn't expected me to refuse her entry. "You want to kick me out and make me stay in a hotel?" I swept my hair back, smiling faintly. "Of course not. It's just that I sold my second house a few days ago, and now I only have a 1-bedroom apartment left. How can it possibly accommodate the 4 of us? After divorcing my ex-husband, I had 2 houses in my name. One was the small apartment my daughter and I lived in, and the other was a large apartment with 3 rooms and 2 living areas. My sister had always coveted that large apartment. In my previous life, she would come begging every few days, even bringing my parents-in-law and the entire family. Her and her son's malice towards me and my daughter was partly because they wanted to seize our property and leave us with nothing. So, in this life, I decisively rented out that house. "You said you sold it? You bitch, why didn't you discuss such a big matter with me first? Your wings have grown, haven't they?" My sister was heartbroken that the house she considered hers had vanished. She was so angry she wanted to slap me. I quickly dodged past her. "I'm not talking to you anymore. I have to go pick up Daisy from school. As for hotels, there's a decent one near the subway station, only 300 yuan a night. Go quickly." After picking up Daisy from daycare, I checked the hallway camera. I saw my sister still squatting in front of my door, not having left. 2 days later was the weekend, so I took Daisy to the next city. We had a relaxing day of fun. While playing, I checked the camera again. I saw my sister sitting on a sack, angrily stuffing a spoon of worms into my nephew's mouth. Ungrateful brat, just because you read a few years of books, you think you're above everyone else. You only gave birth to one daughter and refused to have more. No wonder you got divorced. My dear, just eat more fortune worms, and sooner or later, you'll take all your aunt's assets. I heard every single word clearly. I immediately booked an extra night at the hotel, deciding not to go home that weekend. The truth proved I had overestimated my sister's endurance. After crying outside the door all night, at 7 a.m. on Saturday, she dragged her luggage and my nephew away, cursing loudly as she went. I didn't believe she would be so cunning as to turn back. Sure enough, on Monday when I returned home, my sister unexpectedly appeared. Without a word, she dragged me to the hospital. My nephew was lying on the hospital bed, barely breathing. His chubby face was now sunken, and he neither cried nor fussed, looking like a lost soul. My sister began to play the pitiful role. This trip to the city was so rushed. Your brother-in-law hasn't been paid for months at the construction site. Now I only have 200 yuan left, not even enough to pay my son's hospital fees. What should I do? Don't you think you have some obligation? I had anticipated this and turned my pockets inside out. Sister, I sympathize, but I'm also struggling. If you had told me half a month ago, I might have been able to help you borrow some money, but now all the money from selling the house has been used to buy insurance for Daisy. I genuinely can't do anything. My sister's eyes widened with resentment, glaring at me as if she wanted to devour me alive. Before she could explode, the doctor walked in, interrupting. Who is the guardian of Leo? My sister rushed forward. Doctor, is my son about to evolve? The shaman in the village said he's very smart. A hot head is a sign of rapid brain development. The doctor angrily retorted, what nonsense are you talking about? A child with prolonged fever would normally be fine with a few dexamethasone injections. Now it's meningitis, and there's a high possibility of intellectual disability. Meningitis, intellectual disability. My sister froze for a moment, then erupted, showering everyone with curses. Your whole family is stupid. How dare you curse my son with illness out of nowhere? My son has a purple star destiny. How could he be affected by such trivial illnesses? The doctor, maintaining professionalism, didn't argue with her, but pulled me into the hallway to explain the diagnosis. The child likely has acute viral meningitis and needs a thorough checkup at a neurology specialist. I returned to the room and repeated the doctor's words verbatim. My sister was blinded by her so-called purple star destiny. She ignored the doctor's advice as if it were wind blowing past her ears, even pointing her finger in my face and cursing, "You're all jealous because my son has a good destiny. I don't believe your nonsense." After saying that, she picked up Leo and left, forgetting the IV drip still in my nephew's hand. It hurt the child, making him cry loudly. My sister violently pulled out the needle. Passing the doctor, she added another curse. "Injections, my foot, you're only good at harming my son." My sister angrily went back to our hometown, signaling her intention to sever ties with me. Conversely, the neighbors in the countryside often contacted me. They said my nephew was now weak and slow, even mocking his friends at school for not eating fortune worms, telling them they would all be poor and starve to death later. The neighbors asked me, "What exactly are fortune worms?" I smiled. "I don't know, probably just real worms." They listened and scoffed. "I told you, if eating worms could change destiny, why wouldn't the worms themselves escape being eaten first?" There were still clear-headed people in the world. It was just a pity my sister was too deeply entrenched, rushing headlong into her mistakes without looking back. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, Leo was old enough to take university entrance exams. My sister suddenly contacted me, beating around the bush to ask to register her household in my name. I refused immediately. Daisy is also about to take her university exams. Her school requires not only scores but also household registration. Our hometown is developing well now. Didn't you say Leo's destiny was good? He can study anywhere. My sister's voice immediately turned sharp as a knife. "You dare to kick me out?" Before she could finish her curse, I hung up. 3 months later, my sister posted a new status update on her social media. "My beloved son's suffering for over a decade was not in vain. Thank you, little wealth god. Thank you, new home. Thank you, school." Attached was a photo of a brand new house. I was still wondering where my sister got the money to buy a house when an unexpected incident helped me understand everything. It turned out the reason she was so desperate to have Leo study in my area was because Leo had stolen a classmate's watch and was caught red-handed, with both the person and the stolen item present. In the surveillance video, he stealthily entered the empty classroom, reached into a backpack, and easily took out a watch. He happily admired it, played with it until he was bored, then put it in his pocket, even smiling until the very last second before being caught. We all watched the video in the principal's office. My sister's face was ashen. I had been dragged along by my sister to provide support, but from beginning to end, I didn't say a word, only silently watching the bizarre mother and son disgrace themselves. The homeroom teacher calmly said, "Leo's guardian, how do you think we should handle this? Many students in the class have reported missing items." After checking, we found that Leo was the culprit in all cases. My sister showed no shame, even scoffing. "Do you have any other evidence? My son is destined for wealth. He wouldn't bother with their petty trinkets worth a few dollars." The teacher opened her laptop, and over a dozen video clips appeared one after another. The cover photos all showed Leo stuffing stolen items into his pocket. The teacher asked, "Is this enough evidence?" My sister still argued boldly, "It's your fault for not managing your students properly. Who told them to bring those things to school? Isn't this luring my son to steal?" She could twist theft into something else, which astonished everyone in the room. The parent of the student whose watch was stolen said coldly, "Theft is theft, don't make excuses. My son's watch was touched by your son and is now dirty. If you don't compensate us with a new one, there's nothing to discuss." My sister snorted, looking at the teacher and parent with indignation. She pulled out her wallet. "Compensate then, as if I can't afford it." She pulled out a few dozen yuan. The parent immediately snatched the wallet. "A few dozen yuan? Are you blind? That watch costs 30,000 yuan. It was my sister's turn to truly go crazy. She hadn't expected a high school student to wear something so expensive. "Are you all ganging up to bully a countrywoman like me? Is there no justice left?" My sister sat down on the floor, throwing a tantrum, crying and demanding to call the police. The principal and homeroom teacher reluctantly called 110. But when the police arrived, the money still had to be compensated. The watch was a genuine Omega, with a retail price of 33,000 yuan on their official website. It must be said that Leo had a keen eye for investment. Among so many items, he chose the most expensive one to steal. This time, he picked the wrong target. The police advised negotiation and settlement because of the large sum of money and because Leo was already 19 years old. Even if he was intellectually disabled, he could very likely have a criminal record, which would affect him for life. My sister still hoped her son would become a wealthy official. How could she stand by and watch his path be blocked? Under police mediation, the other parent didn't press charges, agreeing that 3,000 yuan would settle the matter. My sister, with tears streaming down her face, reluctantly paid the money, sitting in the police station watching the other party sign the waiver. At that moment, I heard two police officers whispering. He looked familiar just now. Thinking back, 6 months ago, I worked on several theft cases in the district, and 8 or 9 of them involved him. He's only 19 and already like this. Don't his parents manage him? Raising such a child, his parents probably aren't any good either. They probably just want him to pretend to be foolish to get more money, right? After hearing that, all the confusion in my mind became clear. No wonder my sister suddenly had a lot of money to buy a house in the city, so that was the kind of fortune she had. And no wonder she had to avoid the villagers, running to the city to live secretly. Villagers, regardless of whether someone was sick or not, would beat a thief soundly. My sister certainly couldn't endure that retaliation, so she poured her money into buying a house to take refuge. In my previous life, when Leo lived in my house, he also engaged in theft. Luckily, I was vigilant early on and took him to each house to apologize and compensate, preventing greater harm. My sister didn't care about right or wrong, only money. Even if it meant making Leo dig up ancestral graves, she would probably do it. By the river, how can one avoid wet feet? My sister had lost both money and face, yet she still took out her belt and beat her son right there. "You brat, how dare you go stealing? You can't even steal properly, it's all for nothing. I spent so much money buying fortune worms for you to eat, and in the end, it's all useless." The more she scolded, the angrier she got, finally saying, "From now on, you have to eat at least 10 worms every meal. Until you earn back the 3,000 yuan, your portion will be reduced." Besides me, my sister, and my nephew, no one knew what fortune worms actually were. But seeing my sister hitting Leo, even the parent who had just signed the waiver felt pity. If you can't raise your child, then don't just hit him. What good is that? Look at that boy, scrawny like a monkey. He might even be abused at home. That parent was only half right. Leo was indeed thin, sickly, and sallow, with messy hair, and had suffered from meningitis since childhood, leading to delayed intellectual development. His reactions were always a beat slower than others. His appearance was no different from a monkey, all thanks to my sister forcing him to eat parasites every day. But to say my sister abused her son would be unfair to her. After all, she regarded this beloved son as a star of destiny descended to earth, entrusting all her glory and wealth to him. How could she bear to torment him? They were a typical toxic symbiotic relationship, seemingly holding hands and heading towards glory. But the result for me was a broken home and shattered life. So, I felt no emotion whatsoever. I only pretended to offer a few words of advice after the police managed to separate them. My sister snorted coldly, leading Leo home. Before leaving, Leo suddenly looked up at me, his eyes dark and cold. I frowned slightly, a sense of unease rising in my heart. That expression was exactly like the gaze he gave me before he tried to kill me in my previous life. Given another life, I would naturally not let others kill me at will. Just as my daughter was about to enter university, I used years of savings to buy a new apartment near her dream university. The security was strict, and the management was diligent, making it difficult for strangers to enter and exit the complex. I didn't expect my sister to intercept me at the foot of my company building. "You haven't been answering your phone lately. I missed you terribly." She enthusiastically rushed to hug me, but I dodged to the side, betraying no emotion. "If there's something you need, say it quickly. I have to go to work." An unusual event implies a scheme. She had never treated me kindly since childhood. Her sudden warmth today surely meant she was planning something sinister. My sister didn't even bother to hide it. "I heard Daisy is about to go to university. Kids these days study so hard, they might not even get into their desired school." I gave a cold laugh. "Say one more word and I'll tear your mouth off right now. A dog biting Lu Dongbin doesn't know good intentions. You're Daisy's aunt. Surely you wouldn't harm her." She softened, pretending to be pitiful, clinging to my hand and refusing to let go. "This is destiny, giving your family a chance. Remember the fortune worms I got for Leo? I can get some for Daisy too. 20 yuan a worm." Old man Liu the shaman had said that as long as you're sincere, it will definitely help Daisy get into Tsinghua or Peking University. From her rambling words, I finally understood the situation. It turned out she planned to introduce the shaman to me and incidentally sell some worms to make a profit. Over the years, she had been tight-lipped, and I had no idea who had deceived her. It was only when she accidentally let it slip that my eyelids twitched. "It's old man Liu behind the village. He's really capable?" I scoffed in angry laughter. Old man Liu was nearly 70, had never married, and 30 years ago, he had indecently assaulted a girl and was imprisoned for over a decade. The villagers despised him and drove him out of the village to live in isolation. By my calculations, my sister started feeding her son worms right around the time he was released from prison. An old man with a mountain of crimes transformed into a shaman. Only my foolish sister would believe it. Thinking of that, I ran out of patience. "If you're sick, go get treatment. If you bother me again, don't blame me for calling the police, regardless of our sisterly bond." The building security guard stared. My sister didn't dare to act recklessly. She could only lead Leo away. Leo turned his head to look at me again, his eyes seemingly trying to say something. A frightening premonition immediately surged within me. My sister couldn't have shared the secret of the fortune worms for no reason. It must have been at her son's own request. Leo was grown up now, no longer a child easily tricked into eating live worms as before. Living in a normal environment for many years, he must have realized the difference in his eating habits. I didn't believe he had no opinions of his own. Before summer vacation, a major incident occurred at Leo's school. Worms were found in the students' meals. The first person to discover it was a little girl. She ate little, only a small portion each meal, so she often had leftover food, but that day she ate heartily. She cleaned her plate and then, to her horror, discovered chopped worm carcasses floating in the sauce. Parents immediately rushed to the school, shouting and screaming, believing the cafeteria hygiene was poor. The school apologized profusely, promising to inspect the entire cafeteria system. Initially, it seemed everything was resolved, but every other day, a student would discover worms in their meal. What was notable was that all the victims were in the same class, which was Leo's class. Even if the school leadership was slow to understand, they began to suspect something was amiss. The head of the department led a group of teachers to secretly monitor the entire process from chef preparation to packaging, but found nothing. Just as they were about to give up, they suddenly saw Leo, representing his class, collecting lunch. He took out a tissue and secretly put something wrapped in it into several lunchboxes. He was caught red-handed. The school poisoning incident caused a sensation, even making the front page of the local newspaper. The principal, afraid of taking responsibility, immediately called the police. When she heard the news, my sister came to the school to cause a scene, not only scolding Leo but also insulting innocent students and teachers. "This isn't poison, these are fortune worms. My son gave you good things to eat. It's your blessing. You're given a face and don't know how to appreciate it. You even dare to bite back." What a bunch of idiots. The angry teachers and parents said, "We don't care if they're worms or what." Together, they took my sister to the police station. Public poisoning is a serious crime. Even if the worms weren't toxic, and even if Leo had intellectual disabilities, this time he couldn't easily escape punishment as before. The parents demanded that my sister bear all the medical examination costs for the entire class and provide emotional compensation for the students who had eaten the worms. This wasn't a matter of a few hundred or a few thousand yuan. The medical examination costs for over 50 people would be at least 5 figures. The dream of getting rich that my sister had cherished for years finally shattered like a pile of garbage. Leo didn't become a star of fortune, but a scourge that bankrupted the entire family. After the parents collectively sued, the court enforced the judgment, draining all the money from my sister's bank account. Fortunately, all the students were fine, except for Leo. He had eaten live worms for 19 years, and his body was riddled with parasites, accompanied by anemia, hepatitis, and liver and spleen damage. This was why he was small and sickly. Misfortunes never come singly. Leo's malicious behavior caused panic throughout the school. Parents adamantly refused to allow him to continue his studies. No other school dared to accept my sister and Leo. They became two rotten piles of excrement shunned by society. Under pressure from the collective petition of the parents, Leo was forced to drop out of school. Everyone understood that "forced to drop out" was just a euphemism for expulsion. At 19, with intellectual disabilities and a criminal record, his future held only illness and darkness. The house my sister bought in the city was foreclosed by the court, and the money from the sale was used to compensate the victims. Her husband, whom I had rarely seen, beat my sister after hearing the news and drove the mother and son out of the house. My sister didn't dare return to our hometown, so she took Leo and rented a small room in a slum. The police were very responsible. During the reinvestigation of the case, they called me, hoping I could appeal to our sisterly bond to persuade my sister to re-educate her son. I didn't want to get involved, but I was also curious to see how miserable my sister had become, so I gladly agreed. Upon arrival, the first sight that greeted me was an incredibly messy scene. The sofa was piled high with clothes, stiff and yellowed from not being washed for who knows how long. On the coffee table were plastic lunch boxes and leftover food, emitting a rancid odor in the scorching heat. I glanced over and even saw a few chopped worm carcasses floating in a bowl of soup. My sister, holding a ceramic jar in one hand, used the other to force Leo's mouth open and stuff worms into it. "You bastard. You don't want to eat, but you have to eat. How much money have I spent raising you all these years? You haven't earned a single penny back, and I even lost our house. And you dared to share worms with your classmates, ruining your chance at fortune. Hurry up and eat all these fortune worms and go find a job. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Leo's face was blood red, his neck veins bulging. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't escape my sister's grip. After only a few days, he looked even more emaciated. Finally, the police had to intervene and rescue him. Leo hid behind the police, trembling. "Uncle, please save me. I don't want to eat worms anymore." Then he turned towards me. "Auntie, please." He wanted to appear pitiful, hoping I would soften, but I had a premonition. Before our eyes met, I turned away, pretending not to hear anything. The memory of my cold death in the previous life was still vivid. A rope as thick as 2 fingers tightened around my neck. I struggled desperately, but I couldn't resist the strength of a healthy Leo. A bloodthirsty glint flashed in his eyes as he tightened the rope bit by bit, muttering, "It's all your fault. If I had eaten fortune worms since childhood, how could I live such a humble life? You must die. I will inherit your property. Consider it your atonement." I had died in that hateful gaze, losing vitality bit by bit. Yet in this life, he said he didn't want to eat worms anymore and was begging me for protection. Unfortunately, I am just an ordinary person, not a compassionate saint filled with divine light. I couldn't feel even a shred of pity for someone who had once taken the lives of my daughter and me. My sister, seeing Leo so weak and pathetic, erupted in anger and slapped him hard across the face. "You, what right do you have to teach me how to raise my son? This is my family's private matter." My sister stood with hands on hips, cursing at me and the police. Faced with such a mother and son, the police were helpless. They could only take Leo to the station for overnight care. They indirectly asked if I wanted to temporarily adopt him or urged my sister not to force her son to eat worms anymore. I replied indifferently, "Those two are devoted to each other. I'm just an aunt. I have no right to speak. Interfering is wrong, and not interfering is also wrong. It's better to stand by and watch. At least I'll be safe." The next day, Leo was returned to the rented room. I thought I would no longer be involved with them in this life. But 5 years later, at 2 a.m., I unexpectedly received a call from my sister. Through the phone, her voice was weak. "Vivian, Vivian, quickly come save me. That beast wants to kill me." I hesitated for a moment, then called 110. After confirming my sister had called to report the crime, I drove to the rented room. The door was tightly locked. Knocking repeatedly yielded no response, so the police had to break down the door. The moment the door burst open, I saw my sister lying face up on the floor, blood staining the entire floor red. Strangely, it looked like she had been hacked to death, but her mouth was full of white foam. In the bubbling foam, swarms of black worms writhed. The police quickly apprehended the culprit. It was none other than my sister's beloved son, Leo. Without needing to be interrogated, Leo immediately confessed to his crime. It turned out he had endured enough of his mother forcing him to eat worms, believing that all the misfortunes in his life were caused by her. From the time he was brought back home, he harbored a plot to kill his mother. He had once bought a rope to strangle my sister, but because he was too weak and tormented by parasites, he didn't have enough strength. He was clearly no match for his mother. So he went to the convenience store, bought rat poison, and mixed it into his mother's food. My sister, completely unsuspecting, ate all the poisoned rice and soup. In the middle of the night, the poison took effect. She fell from the bed, begging her son to take her to the hospital. But Leo only wanted his mother dead. How could he listen? Not only did he not take her to the hospital, but he also ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and repeatedly hacked her. After hacking her, still not satisfied, he stuffed her mouth full of fortune worms, wanting her to die in humiliation. But my sister was only pretending to be dead to escape. When he left, she successively called me, then 120, and finally 110. I don't know what my sister was thinking before she died, anger, resentment, or regret. But unfortunately, I didn't care and didn't want to know. 5 minutes before the police broke down the door, my sister had died from excessive blood loss. Leo smiled at me. "Auntie, guess why my mother called you first?" Before I could answer, he said himself, "She wanted you to come to the house, preferably at the right time, so you would die with her too." My sister was the type of person who, even in death, wanted to drag others down with her. I had anticipated this long ago, so there wasn't a ripple in my heart. Leo observed my expression for a while, then continued, "Actually, after killing my mother, I also went to your apartment complex. Unfortunately, the security guards wouldn't let me in. Otherwise, you would be dead too." He suddenly became agitated. "Why aren't they the ones who died? You're the one who should die the most. Why did you watch me suffer and not save me? Why did you abandon me?" His voice was hoarse, no different from an untamed beast. I smiled faintly, stood up, and left. You reap what you sow. Leo was now 24 years old. What awaited him was the punishment of the law. In 24 years of life, he had profited over 100,000 yuan. I also understood why my sister wanted to sell fortune worms to me for 20 yuan a worm, because she bought them from old man Liu wholesale for 10 yuan a worm. She intended to sell them to me for double the profit. After the forensic examination, the truth was revealed. Fortune worms were actually long-tailed maggots, commonly found in sewers and wastewater. Old man Liu collected these filthy worms and branded them with a magical label to trick people into believing they were destiny-changing worms, exploiting this for profit. But in every misfortune, there's a silver lining. Over the years, only my sister was the victim of this deception. No other innocent families were implicated. Due to the serious nature of the case, Old Man Liu was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 5 years in prison. As for Leo, he was found guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced to life imprisonment. But his body was so emaciated and damaged that it would be difficult for him to live that long. His lawyer told him that to have a chance at a reduced sentence, he needed to receive a letter of waiver from the victim's family. Leo immediately changed his attitude, crying and begging me to write a letter of forgiveness. Faced with his remorse, I remained silent. Because saying anything would be wrong, it was best to remain silent. Of course, I tore his letter of plea for forgiveness into pieces and threw the fragments directly into his face. Stay in prison and atone for your sins. After Leo's story concluded, I began preparing for my daughter's engagement ceremony. Seeing my daughter both nervous and happy, I gently reassured her. Don't be nervous, just do your best. What I need to do is create a comfortable environment, be a trustworthy friend to my child, and using harsh coercion to control a child's destiny only makes both generations unhappy. I hope all parents in the world can respect their children. Don't use the name of love to love in the wrong way.